What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another live stream. Thanks for waiting around while we got things set up. But I know it's a pretty busy assessment time right now, so shoot through your questions for upcoming assessments. If you need anything clarified, how would you approach different questions? Let me know your assessment questions or tasks in the chat, and I'm happy to respond to try and help you out. So let me know any questions that you might have regarding anything HSC English related. It could be VCE, it could be, might be in another year and you have an exam coming up, year 7 to 12, whatever it might be. Let me know your questions in the chat. Let me know what you're working on. You might want to know how to respond to a particular essay question, do a multimodal, use a related text. Just need some help structuring your essay. How do you actually deliver something that is not an essay, but it might be, as I said, multimodal, where you've got to construct a presentation, you've got to have some audiovisual elements. So let me know what you need help with, and we'll go from there. Exciting news, though. We've got someone in the room here, which is good to see. But exciting news is that we've now made it super easy for all of you to get access to JeddAI if you don't already have access to JeddAI. If you go to Jeddle.com, I'll just show you it very quickly here. This is the free JeddAI version here. So nice and easy to start using it, submit your drafts, get feedback, let us know what you think. Here we are. So if you go to Jeddle.com, this is what you'll see. And you can now, if you go, you just click the sign up page. When you go to Jeddle, click sign up, and then you can go JeddAI student. And there is a free version here. This is new. Free version here. You can start using it, give it a go, see what you think. And you're going to get rubric specific feedback for your responses. So while I'm sharing what that looks like, Bhavya, and sorry if I'm not saying your name correctly, how to prepare for my English test, which can be on any past question. Let me know what text you're looking at. Give me some more context if you can, some more details, because that will allow me to assist more precisely. While we're doing that, if you go onto your JeddAI account, which again, you can make a free account, or you can get the paid version, do unlimited submissions, or you can even get the pro version and you can get access to our team of experts, real life experts, who will give you feedback on all of your drafts for the rest of the year so that you can refine all of your kind of draft materials for your exams. But let me just put this in the right view. Basically, if you submit a draft, you can put in any essay question, and then you can get detailed feedback on different areas that you can improve on. It'll even tell you how to reword things, how to rework it based on what you had. And then you can also see exactly where you fall into in terms of the rubrics and like the grade ranges. So if you want to see roughly where you're at, you want to get specific feedback so you can improve your essays, you can get a free account now. If you go to Jeddle.com and go to sign up, you can get a free account on JeddAI now. Just go to the JeddAI student free version and you can input all of your drafts and work on it that way. Cool. So that's on Jeddle.com, a little bit of a plug up front. Now, again, questions. I mean, I've got a general question here. How to prepare for my English test, which can be on any past question, I assume that is. Again, if you can add some more context, that would be super helpful because at the moment it's pretty vague. What is the nature of the test? How many minutes do you have? Is it just on one prescribed text? Is there a related text? Are there short answers? Is this for year 12? Common module? If you can give some details on that. And anyone else who's in here right now, just type in your questions in the chat and I can let you know what I know to help you. So put the questions in and we'll go from there. In the meantime, we might pull up some of the submissions. I know some students have been submitting some work to be reviewed, so we'll get that going as well. We'll get that going. Might look at a piece or two in terms of submissions that have come through. Remember that in the link below the YouTube videos, that is where you can submit your own drafts, just a paragraph at a time with a question, so that we can actually break that down and so that you can improve. So do submit your work there. I'll get that ready, but again, put your questions in the chat and I'll help as best I can. Just looking at some of the past questions. You did make it on time. Great to see you. I was just saying before, we just released the free JeddAI version for students. So if you want to get unlimited feedback for your drafts, then you can start on the free version, see how that goes for you on Jeddle.com. How to avoid repetition in my body paragraphs? Okay, that's a really good question. And actually, I might share a doc to show you this. A lot of students struggle with this. A lot of students struggle with repetition in their body paragraphs. They keep saying the same point. They might change up the evidence, but they keep saying the same point. So let's pull this up. Always good to work off a document. All right. Here we go. So just presenting the screen now. Good evening, Nala. Great to see you. Here we go. So question was how to avoid repetition in my body paragraphs. Let's get into it here. It's a great question. So let's say you have a body paragraph here. Now, one of the mistakes students make is they start kind of doing all of their analysis before they've actually thought out the structure of the response. So the first thing I would recommend doing is to think through your structure, including what I call the sub-points, including the sub-points for each sentence of analysis and how they link together, right? And what are you proving with each piece of evidence? Okay, so for each sentence of analysis, because if you don't do that, you'll end up getting stuck. You'll find that, oh, I'm just using a piece of evidence that's making the same point as another piece. Okay, so in practice, if you've got a topic sentence, you might then have, let's just say on average, 3 to 4 pieces of analysis. Okay, so you got your analysis 1. That'll typically look like, you know, a quote, a technique, a verb, effect, or the order I actually typically use is technique, quote, verb, effect. Okay. Oh, not that. That's a link to a JeddAI page. Okay, so technique, quote, verb, effect. Now, your question is really pertaining to these bits because you don't want these to repeat. Okay, so hopefully I'm understanding your question correctly. If you've got a paragraph, what you say about your different pieces of evidence might be repeating one another, okay? So the question is, how do you ensure they don't, right? Because you need to have effect 1, effect 2, effect 3. Okay, what are my tips? My tips are think chronologically, first of all. Like order your evidence. I'm going to make it more specific. Order your evidence chronologically. Typically, the evidence will kind of appear, or rather the extracts will appear, or the story will progress in a way that will allow your argument to progress if you follow the scenes in that order, right? So order your evidence chronologically. That's the simplest thing. That doesn't mean that you have to order your evidence chronologically. It just means that if you struggle with repeating the same point, try order them chronologically. And second point is space out the evidence in terms of where you're getting them from, right? So these are just simple tips that could help, right? I'm not saying everyone has to do this, but space out the evidence in terms of where you're getting them from in the text. For example, evidence 1 might come from page 1, whereas evidence 2 might come from page 24, and then evidence 3 in this paragraph might come from page 49, okay? So if you pull your quotes or evidence or examples, all of those things are the same, obviously, these are your examples. If you pull them in order and space them out, the text is probably focusing on slightly different things, or it's focusing on more advanced concepts or consequences of the previous thing as you skip forward. So obviously you want to understand the whole text, but if you space out the pages and pull out evidence from different parts in that way, you're probably not going to repeat yourself. Whereas if you get all of your evidence from page 1, the concept has probably not developed too much, right? There's only so much you can convey in one page of a novel, if we're talking about a novel, or one scene of a film. Okay, so it could be scenes of a film, novel, in a poem, it could be different sections of the poem in order, different stanzas. But space out the evidence and order it chronologically is how you're going to get a nice progression in your argument, okay? So that's what I would say is a kind of hot tip for how to avoid these effects repeating each other, right? But the second component to this is, yes, you order them out, yes, you space out the evidence, but plan out your subpoints before you add in your evidence, right? Now, what does this mean? This means that you need to know what your effect 1 is, effect 2 is, and effect 3 is, okay? So if you want to know what effect 1, effect 2, effect 3 is, let's go up here. I might just zoom out a little bit there. Then what we're going to do here is ask ourselves different questions or make different points. But I like to ask questions like, say the first paragraph is about the overall problem, like the problem with corruption in a totalitarian state or something, like, or just say the problem with political corruption. Keep it nice and broad for you, okay? What's the problem with political corruption? Well, if you want to break down your concept there or your exploration of political corruption, you might be kind of attacking it from different angles. So you might start with, what does political corruption look like? And then that forces you to get evidence from page 1 about conveying the setting as, corrupt, or conveying the government as corrupt, if it's there, right? But the idea actually should come first, then you find evidence to match it. And obviously you're only going to come up with ideas like, what does political corruption look like, based on your understanding of the text. So you kind of look at the evidence, or you have an understanding of the text, then you come up with this sequence of mini ideas or sub points for the paragraph, and then you go and match up evidence in that chronological order to kind of give an example of these sub points, right? So I often ask these mini questions, and going through this scaffolded process is, yes, kind of tricky and maybe time consuming, and you just want to start writing your analysis out, but it will actually save you so much time and ensure you have that progression that you're after. So effect 1, I ask this question, plan out your subpoints before you add in your evidence using it's kind of like mini questions. Like, ask yourself some questions about the topic sentence idea, or topic sentence idea. So whatever you've said in this topic sentence, you need to break that down into smaller parts now. So what does political corruption look like, right? What are the motivations behind that corruption? And how people are oppressed. Okay, I'm just filling in some other bits. What are the motivations behind that corruption? Then if you ask yourself that, you'll get evidence from page 24, for example, showing, or exemplifying No, I'll keep it showing. Just keep it simple for this purpose. What are the motivations behind that? Showing evidence, or get evidence from page 4, showing, or proving a specific motivation for power that leads to corruption, right? And then you might say, without going into too much depth of the consequences, you might want to think about a flow-on effect from that. So what does political corruption look like? What are the motivations? Why is corruption able to spread? Like, how come it can stay for so long? Now, I'm avoiding going into what's the consequence for the individual too much. Like, we might get into that, but or what's the response of the individual to the corruption? Because that might be the next paragraph. You've got to make sure everything here is still contained within that one idea. And this is just for one body paragraph, right? So there are still 2 other body paragraphs that have to be considered. And all of this should kind of progress naturally. So why is corruption able to spread? How come it remains for so long? Then you get evidence to prove your answer to that question. Okay, and then by kind of thinking this through, now you've got 3 mini questions that all are going to force you to come up with a slightly different mini point that all relate to the topic sentence. So suddenly you have 3 different effects, which is what we were trying to achieve in the first place. All of these are going to be slightly different because you are looking at the concept or the idea in your topic sentence from a different angle, because you ask these questions. What are the motivations? What does political corruption look like? Why is corruption able to spread? And you're giving us more specific nuances on this main idea before you go into the next paragraph where you explore the middle of the text. So this might all be to do with the beginning of the text, pages 124 and 49. They all belong to the beginning of the text, for example. And then your next body paragraph, you do the same, but you're looking at a different idea overall, which might be, well, how do individuals respond to corruption? And then, can individuals overcome corruption? Might be your last body paragraph, if we're using that corruption idea as an example here. So if that makes sense, let me know if that gives you a bit more of an idea of how you can avoid repeating the same points within a paragraph. You ask those mini questions, you order your evidence chronologically, and you space out where you got your evidence from. I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen students who have tables of quotes that don't have any page references, and I find out that they've just gone to Google and just grabbed a couple of extracts, and they don't even know where those extracts are from. So they're taking them completely out of context and then just meshing them together and finding that the argument isn't working. Well, that's because you haven't gone through methodically and thought, well, what's the start of the text about? And what's the key idea that comes out there in terms of the problem? And then looking at your evidence chronologically, looking at what was happening at the time of those extracts that you want to use, so you actually understand the context in which they were appearing, and then coming up with those mini points to mesh together. That's how you act. That's like kind of the harder way of doing it, but it's the best way to do it. And it's going to save you a lot of time in the long run. Okay, so I hope that helps. What you're seeing on screen is how you can avoid repeating yourself. That's how you've got to think through that structure overall before you just start writing up your analysis on specific quotes, and make sure you know where the quotes are from. Okay, next question. How can we write a topic sentence based on my overall thesis in my introduction? I'm doing Billy Elliot and a related text. Okay, so you're doing a related text, but presumably you are going to do a paragraph on your prescribed text, Billy Elliot, and then a paragraph on your related text. Just tell me if I'm understanding that correctly, if you're still with us. You've got another question there about how to make the thesis unique, but let's just focus on this one for now. Let me know if you're still here, how exactly you're structuring your essay, because that's going to determine my answer here. How can we write a topic sentence based on my overall thesis in my introduction? the topic sentence should be relating to your thesis, obviously. The thesis kind of unpacks the overall complexity that you're going to explore. What is your overall argument about? What are you exploring in terms of the key tension in the text? Why aren't things simple in terms of the human experiences? What's the challenge in there that the characters have to overcome? That's your thesis. You're going to present that complexity, right? I just think of the whole introduction as a thesis, to be honest. I find that, after 12 years of teaching this stuff, it's just easy to think of the whole introduction as a thesis. But yes, the bit I think you're referring to is like maybe the opener, where you establish the complexity, the tension that you're going to unpack. And then towards the end of the intro, you're kind of going to present your overall resolution, or what the overall authorial intent was. Like, at the end of the day, what are we meant to take away? What's the lesson that the composer is trying to impart on the audience? You can think about either of those things as a thesis. I just think about the whole intro as a kind of thesis. Yeah, so you are doing one paragraph on Billy Elliot and one paragraph on the related text. So if you let me know your thesis or the gist of it here, like what's the nuance, what's the complexity you're exploring, what's the question or the topic, what are the rubric terms you want to unpack, I can help you with that. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you want to know in terms of how you can actually write the topic sentence. Make sure that your topic sentence is cause and effect, and make sure that you refer to the form of the text. If you're going to just do a single topic sentence that mentions the text, then you should also have the most important aspect of the form. Like, what is it about the way Billy Elliot has been composed overall? And perhaps you might also want to include something on context, although I often like to bring context in the second sentence, and you can tie that in with your analysis. But that's how I'd be thinking about it. What's your cause and effect point that connects with the thesis? How does Billy Elliot explore a problem, let's say, or a challenge? Maybe it's just the overall challenge, and you can even talk about how it's resolved because you're only doing one paragraph on it. In relation to the thesis. But again, give me some guidance on the topic and what you're exploring, and I can actually give you an example. In the meantime, let's have a look at another one. And again, for those who weren't here earlier, sorry if you were here earlier, just excited about the release. But if you go to Jeddle.com and you go to the sign up page, you can now get a free JeddAI account that actually lets you submit drafts and get feedback based on the rubrics. So just go to the JeddAI student tab here, toggle here, after you click sign up. So that is free now, and it's just easier to use. All right. How do I effectively signpost the ideas of my 3 paragraphs in the introduction without making it too clunky? Also, for my essay on 1984, how much context do I need per paragraph? Yeah, that's a good question. So you want to signpost your ideas without obviously just repeating word for word the topic sentences that will be in your 3 paragraphs. Although, yeah, so let me show you exactly how I'd approach that. I mean, again, showing you is always the easiest way, at least for me. So, question, how to incorporate or signpost, how to introduce 3 body paragraph ideas in my introduction, without it being clunky. It's a great question, if I may say so. So in an introduction, let's just look at a 4-sentence introduction, okay? 4-sentence, usually a solid amount. Some students do 5. 3 tends to be not quite enough, I think, to really stand out as a band 6 student. So I think 4 to 5 range is always on point. 4 good ones is definitely sufficient, and it gives you more time to get into the in-depth analysis in the body paragraphs. So intro, 4 sentences, let's say on average. Well, minimum. I'll do minimum. 4 sentences, max 5. Actually, that's how I'm going to word it. And here's how I kind of think about it. We can think about the thesis, if you will, at the start, where you introduce the complexity. So I almost like to think about this as an and yet sentence. So you say something, you have like a statement, and then you say, and yet this happens this happens as well. So you might say, individuals are motivated to maintain their individuality. And yet, when pressured to conform or when threatened with alienation, individuals will surrender their autonomy. They'll give it up. Okay, well, that's a complexity. So you introduce that. You might not necessarily call that your thesis. It is what you're going to argue, but you don't have to have like a firm resolution in that sense. But yeah, that's kind of how I think about the thesis. And then you're kind of intro in here, like your topic sentence 1 or idea 1, intro body 1, but you're also introducing the text and context and all of that. So it's like you're doing multiple things at once, but you're gradually introducing your ideas. But these will sound different to a topic sentence because you've also got to cover other things, right? So you might introduce the context, overall context of the text, plus you might introduce something about the plot overall. And while doing that, you bring in your first idea. It's just you don't have to go in as much detail as you would in, say, a topic sentence. Okay, so you bring in the plot, bring in the context, and kind of ease into your idea 1. You might not get to your idea 1 in that sentence. Maybe you'll merge body 1 and 2 ideas in the same sentence. But if you're following, you're trying to kind of introduce everything about the text while also covering those ideas in order. They don't have to be in separate sentences, but I find that's a good starting point. So you might talk about the form of the text, introduce the form. So you're introducing context up here, you're introducing form up here, you are introducing plot up here. So again, you're kind of doing a lot of things at once in not too much detail. Introduce form. Okay, great. Then you might talk about the authorial intent, because this is typically like an ultimately sentence. Ultimately, Orwell challenges responders to, or challenges readers to whatever. So an authorial intent, what's the ultimate outcome? But you are also going to foreshadow what the last paragraph is about, right? Ultimately, by representing the largely futile rebellion of the protagonists or the protagonist, Orwell challenges readers, right? So by representing the largely futile rebellion, that's an example of how you can just intro your body 3 in just one clause. You don't have to do anything else, but then you move into the overall intent in that sentence. And that's it. So that's how you signpost body 3 in one clause. See how that's different to a topic sentence where you would go into more detail about that specific idea. So you're not doing the full conceptual introduction because you're actually going to cover more territory. You're going to make use of this sentence, or you're going to use this sentence to do multiple things, not just introduce the third body paragraph idea. But you are doing it while introducing maybe the most important aspect of form, which would be here. Okay, so think about a 4-sentence intro that way. I hope what I'm saying makes sense. You're kind of doing multiple things at once because it's an introduction. So not only are you introducing the key ideas, you're also introducing context, plot, form. You might have a couple of things on form or context if it's really important, and that is a more sophisticated response generally. But you don't need to do the same level of analysis or give the same level of detail on the topic sentence ideas, on your 3-body paragraph ideas, because you're also doing these other things. So tie them together, do multiple things at once, but still move towards that resolution paragraph in the intro. So still come out with your ideas in order, whether it's over 3 sentences or 2, while also introducing the other aspects of the text and linking it to the question. I hope that is clear enough, and I hope that's helpful. Let me know in the comments if that is making sense, what I'm saying. doing multiple things at once, not having to provide as much detail on each idea from the bodies, but still signposting them in the way I've shown you with yellow there. I think that's the right balance. That's what I've seen work for a lot of students. How does one improve flow between analyses or sentences of analysis in order to ensure the arguments are cohesive? Are there any tips or features of cohesive response to hone in on, so to speak? Yeah, so flow between analysis. Well, one thing is to make sure that the points are moving forward. And something I like to do is always use words that kind of force you to do the right thing. So going back to the document here, how to ensure my sentences flow from one to the next, slash make my kind of writing cohesive, tie together. Well, again, you need to actually think about that structure, like plan out your structure sentence by sentence before you start writing anything in full, would be my first tip. Make sure every sentence of analysis, because you're asking about analysis mainly, moves forward. What do I mean by moves forward? And what I would say here, the hot tip is use language that forces your argument to move forward. Okay, so what is language that forces your argument to move forward? Words like consequently within the paragraph. Consequently, the personification of quote conveys this, but you have to now talk about a consequence of what you just said in the previous sentence. Provide a consequence of the thing you just analyzed in the previous sentence of analysis. So I do like words like consequently. I like words like yet, however, by extension. I don't like words like similarly, because it sounds like, or reinforce, because it sounds like you're going to repeat yourself. Those words don't force you to move forward. They force you to say something similar. Now, if you're doing a comparative essay, then there's a place for that because you're comparing between texts. But otherwise, I wouldn't use those ones, right? These ones are fine. Furthermore, I mean, that just goes beyond. You could say, if you've talked about something specific, you could say this is, or on a broader level. I used to love that phrase. On a broader level, if you talk about the individual, now you talk about society. If you previously analyzed something relating to the individual, now you show how it affects society / the collective, right? So you can zoom in and zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. You're building your argument this way, okay? So try and use words like this that really force you to extend yourself, to provide more and more nuance and layers. That's how you get cohesion. Everything is building on the previous thing. So language, specific words act as triggers that enable you to do the right thing. That's why I'm obsessed with just specific words and phrases that actually make everything else easy, okay? So I would lock in those words, try and use them throughout, and that will help you build that cohesion. In terms of actually how to make, I mean, you are mainly asking about flow between analysis. You're not saying like how to make your sentence flow, because then we could get into using shorter quotes and making sure the quotes flow like a normal sentence. In a way that if you were to remove the quotation marks, it would still sound like a normal sentence. There's flow within the sentence. You're asking about between sentences. So I would really focus on building your structure, using subpoints, planning out what each sentence is going to prove before you write the full sentences, and then using language like consequently, yet, however, etc., to force yourself to move the argument forward. You don't have to use those words or connectors. They're called connectors You don't have to use those every single sentence because that can get a bit stale, like it gets a bit repetitive itself. But you could start with them, and then you might find that you can actually delete a couple of them, and at least the sentence is then continuing forward in the same way. Those words just acted as a kind of signal for you to do the right thing. How can we make our thesis statement unique to get band 6, and what can we do to go beyond what is taught in class? Well, if you want to go beyond what is taught in class, my best advice is to use Jeddle. That will have a collection of all the analysis that will help you extend, unless your class is already using Jeddle, in which case amazing. Just use the resource more than anyone else, and make sure you do outside research. Jeddle is part of outside research, right? So we try and collate all of the analysis that you would find online by doing independent research of academic articles and journals, and looking at kind of the best model responses and what other students have said. If you can actually hone in on that analysis and focus a lot on form, right, in your responses, form and context, then that helps you extend. Okay. But in terms of a thesis statement, again, we don't want to put too much emphasis on this one sentence. It's an important one, but I just think more about your whole introduction. But if you want to have, look, there's two. I want to give you like a kind of a caution as well here. If you try to overdo the thesis and make it so unique, and you commit to it fully, it might not be that easily adaptable to a new question on the day, and then you kind of use it anyway because you don't know how to adapt it, and then it just looks like you're repeating a prepared essay, which you are for that sentence because you haven't adapted it or answered the question, and then it actually only does harm to your final mark. The first sentence you write needs to link to the question, so it's better to have something a little bit more robust, not just like a short punchy one. I love short punchy sentences if they can work with a question, and that can definitely make you stand out. Just something refreshing, but it has to link to the question. So there's a trade-off there. I like the idea of having a potential 2-sentence thesis with one punchy sentence at the start, and you can drop the first punchy sentence if it doesn't work perfectly or doesn't work well enough for a question that you get asked. So let's have a look at that for a second. How to create a unique thesis, band 6. All right. One is, well, there's an approach I was just talking about where you have like kind of a punchy sentence. I'll call it A, option A, right? But look, point one overall is don't simply repeat the question. Okay. Point 2 is break down a complexity. It was some of the best advice I ever got in English when I was in year 12, really, was offer a complexity and use words that are conducive to a complexity. That's why before I just said sometimes a thesis is like an and yet kind of sentence, because you're going to say something and yet this, or however this. So focus on a complexity. Focus on the main complexity in the text. Why aren't things simple in the text? Is there a challenge? What's the core challenge? Or tension, right? Focus on that tension. So you can also use words, like, again, use words to do this. Whilst, although. You could also say, individuals are motivated individuals desire the freedom to express themselves, right? And yet, there's my and yet, the motivation to belong to the collective or of the fear, the innate fear of social alienation. Our innate fear of social alienation compels us to forfeit that freedom. See how I'm saying that freedom? That's a little thing, if you notice, I said the freedom, and then we refer back to it in the and yet part where we're showing the complexity. Individuals desire the freedom to express themselves, and yet our innate fear of social alienation, we don't want to be rejected from the crowd, compels us to forfeit that freedom in the name of, well, in times of, we could say, ideological hysteria. We could say in the times of ideological, no, we'll go with hysteria. I mean, I'm trying to think of different examples that you could draw from. I think themselves truly express themselves. Yeah, so that's an example of the and yet function in a thesis, okay? But notice here how specific that is. If you got a question, I'll give you a question here. Example, question on a question about how the text represents freedom. Well, look at how expansive the first sentence is on freedom. It actually says the type of freedom. So it says the freedom to express oneself, right? So, self-expression, freedom of self-expression. That is defined. So if you actually define those keywords by expanding on them, the freedom to what? That gives you bonus points. The and yet frames the complexity. Okay, so follow this carefully. The and yet allows you to say, hey, individuals desire this, but they also fear this. There's a conflict. There's a tension. So I'll just map these. And yet, and tension, okay? Our innate fear of social alienation compels us to forfeit. We can forfeit our freedom, okay? That's nuance, right? That's us providing detail. And we're saying, when would you forfeit the freedom? Times of ideological hysteria. We could probably say that better, but let's just go with that for now. Our innate fear compels us to forfeit. We're really expanding on all of that, right? So all the green is the expansion. Only the blue part is the question. Only the blue part is the key word of the question. Whereas band 4, band 5 responses, even sometimes, they just focus on the words of the question without expanding on them. Whereas look at all the green, a desire to express themselves authentically, and yet our innate fear of social alienation compels us to forfeit that freedom in times of ideological hysteria. So there's so much specific detail around it. It's all framed within one complexity. Okay? I should put this here. And the part 3 of this that you see here is expand on the key terms of the question, because you need to be specific and add value, right? Land and expand. Land on the key terms and expand on the key terms, okay? So if you don't simply repeat the question and you focus on the main complexity and you are expanding on the key terms of the question, that's how you can get to a band 6 level. And yes, to the comment about when I say complexity, am I also referring to a duality or a multiplicity? Yeah, as long as that's like the overall thing you're going to break down, that your argument in the essay revolves around, then yes, a contradiction, right? Or a tension. It doesn't have to be a direct contradiction or a paradox, but just what's the complication? What's the thing that's a challenge? Like, okay, individuals, like think of Billy Elliot. Like a lot of people, even if you're not studying it, Billy Elliot, a boy who wants to do ballet, but society tells him that, hey, that's too feminine, you can't do that. Okay, so yeah, individuals want to express their passions, they want to pursue their passion, but it is difficult to do so when those passions contradict or are at odds with traditional gender expectations. There we go. That's a thesis about Billy Elliot. Here's why it's challenging for the protagonist to do what they want to do. You can, if you think about that for any text, you'll get to a thesis. You'll be able to get to this complication or this complexity. And if you frame it broadly enough, you'll find that you can adapt that to any question. Notice how I've actually framed the example there very broadly, and yet it's quite specific. Look at all the green. It's very specific, and yet it's very broad. If you can find that balance, then you're going to do very well. But yeah, there's kind of like 3 guidelines for you. Don't simply repeat the question. Focus on a complexity and use those words. And make sure every time you do use the keywords of the question, you expand on them and provide specific detail. Define them. Define what they actually mean or what you mean by them. Don't define them like a definition sentence. Define them in the way that I've shown you on screen, with the green going beyond the blue. Okay, hope that helps. Yeah, so for Advanced English Mod B, critical study, is there a place for literary theory? Yes, because you're meant to engage with critical perspectives, but you need to prioritize your personal perspective. Even if you don't have one, you need to come up with your own argument, and you don't want other critical perspectives to dominate. So you want to show at most that you've considered other critical perspectives. You don't have to do this explicitly, but show at most in a body paragraph, or maybe once per body paragraph, how you've considered what a critic has said, or how your interpretation, your personal interpretation, aligns with another literary theory. Maybe it aligns with gender theory, or it aligns with postmodernism, or it challenges a postmodern interpretation, or it aligns with a feminist interpretation, or it actually goes against what a particular critic has said about it. So you might reference that maybe once per body paragraph, but in Mod B for advanced, you don't want that to be in your introduction so as to frame your overall argument. They really want a personal interpretation, but know that you're drawing upon critical perspectives to inform it. So the way that you can show it's informed it is to actually show how you disagree, or maybe partially agree, or fully agree at times with another critic or a perspective, but only do that like once per paragraph. To give you a specific guideline there. You don't have to do it, but that's the extent. Definitely more the case for extension English. Looked at that. Are you giving feedback on drafts by any chance, specifically for multimodal? Yes, I am, but you have to submit them via the link. Have you done that? You have to do them. It's too late now. I mean, let me know when your assessment is due. I'm not doing full scripts or essays, by the way. I'm doing like a paragraph, a reasonably, I was going to say long, but short, or a reasonable length of a paragraph. I'm losing. I don't have the words to say what I want to say, but it can't be too long. Sometimes it's easier just to say exactly that. If you submit a paragraph with a question, with a task, then I'm willing to look at it, but it's got to be on the form that's in the link under the live streams. It's got to come through there, and then I look at them in order. When we get to it, I didn't see anything on a multimodal earlier, so probably not going to get time to get to it tonight. Let me know if you have any specific questions right now, but I'm going to wrap up. I mean, I'm meant to jump off at 9, so we might have to come back to that one. Submit, for everyone else, submit using the live stream link below the YouTube videos. Remember to spread the word as well, of course. And what I should say is make sure right now you get your free JeddAI subscription and share the love. Tell other people to sign up. Send me your feedback. Email the feedback. If there's a feature that you want that's going to help you prepare, let me know. But yeah, that's the big thing at the moment. So I hope that helps. Again, this is where to go. Just go to Jeddle.com, go to the sign up page, and go to JeddAI Student, and you can get the free plan now forever. Keep it forever, and I'm keen to hear your feedback on that. All right, hope that helps everyone. See you soon. If you want to get the most out of these, do come prepared with specific questions, essay questions, assessment notifications that we can talk about and that I can give you some feedback on. Otherwise, make sure to check out jeddle.com and see you soon.